We good? Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, July 11th, 2024 meeting of the school committee. We will open the meeting now at 7:07, and I would ask that we have a motion to enter into an executive session, which is preceding our public meeting. The executive session is pursuant to MGL-C 30A S21A2 to hear a Level 3 grievance filed by the Hopkinton Teachers Association as required by the collective bargaining agreement between the school committee and the Hopkinton Teachers Association, and then to reconvene here in open session. Looking for that motion?
Move.
Motion by Susan, a second by Jamie. Because we're going into executive session, we'll do a roll call starting with you, Susan.
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And I am also a yes, and I think we're meeting Chris in the other room. So we are entered into executive session at 7:08. There you go.
Susan, you can maybe just slide Chris over if we need one more seat.
Is Chris up on the, we want to make sure he's up,
Yeah. Make sure Bob's got Chris locked in.
and if we could
I can go
see
check
him on one of the
We have no
screens.
seats, we must.
You can move down, because, right, well, where are we gonna, because he's gonna, there's Chris, right there.
Okay, so you want to put one down, or
Christmas is.
he's
Come
gonna,
over here, Nancy.
Yeah, come close. And then we can allow the applicants to come up.
How you doing, Brian? Susan, nice to meet you.
All right, are we all ready to go? All right. Good evening and welcome to the joint portion of our meeting with the Select Board and the School Committee. The School Committee has just returned from executive session, so we are running a little bit behind. But I would call the meeting back to order. I believe the Select Board probably needs to call yourself to order as well.
Yeah, the Select Board will call its meeting to order for July 11th, 2024.
Great. So I would invite those who are here in the studio to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we're here for those who are watching at home that may not know. The next portion is we are going to make a joint appointment between the Select Board and the School Committee. Before we do that, we are going to have public comment. And just for people who have not made public comments who might want to make a public comment, the School Committee, our policy dictates the public comment we have here tonight, which allows for up to 3 minutes per speaker for a total of not more than 15 minutes of public comment. So I would ask that people, if you're making public comments, to try not to repeat people ahead of you and to try to get different points from other people. So just if there's a show of hands, how many people are here to make public comments? Okay, so whoever wants to come up first, you can come up and introduce yourself, give your name and address, and then Jamie, if you wouldn't mind watching the time for that. Is that good? All right, welcome.
See if this is adjusted well. Hi, I'm Amy Groves, 2 College Street, and I'm speaking in favor of Kyla McSweeney for the position that you're about to hire for. I've known Kyla for a few years, and I got to know her much better this past year because she was running for Select Board. So I went over her qualifications very, very carefully. And one thing that jumped out at me was that she's running for Select Board, but golly, she'd be good on the school committee. And I know a lot of things about her that maybe didn't make it into her resume. So, I mean, one thing was that she was actually trained and certified as an early elementary school teacher, and she taught for 6 years. And I wasn't sure that was really clear from the resume. I know that she has 2 children currently in the Hopkinton schools. One's in the middle school, one's in the high school. And she does have experience working with an IEP as a parent, so that's a good thing. In her spare time, she's in her 7th year as a Girl Scout leader. So she's right here in Hopkinton, one of the Girl Scout troops. I think one thing that you do know from the resume is that she works at the director level for the Commonwealth, and she works in early childhood education. And she's had a lot of other director positions before, so she deals with hiring and firing and personnel matters. She also manages very large budgets. She's got a lot of funding from the state and from other places, so she's responsible for managing those budgets. And I watched her as she prepared as a Select Board candidate. She really had to learn as she went, to learn about the Hopkinton budget in particular, and she did learn it. It was a lot to pick up in a hurry, but she handled it well. She has a lawyer's background, so I wasn't really surprised about that. The other thing I learned about Kyla is that she is really unflappable. I've seen her in cases where everybody else, including me, would be running around kind of hysterical, kind of upset about things, and things would happen. But she was just as calm as could be, really friendly, really affable, and really well in balance. So I thought that was a really good quality to have in a candidate for this particular position. So I think that I want to encourage you to vote for Kyla because I think she has the qualifications and the temperament for this job. Thanks for taking my comment.
Thank you.
Good evening, Peter Memo, 0 Sanctuary Lane. So I'm sitting here as a resident, as a taxpayer, as a father of a student who's in that school system, also as a fellow public servant. And first, I just want to say, is in all of those roles, is thank you to both Brendan and Kyla for stepping forward. I think we all know, all of us being sort of in sort of the public service and whatnot, that it's not an easy task to take on. They don't have to do this, but they want to do this. And from that standpoint, I think it's terrific that they're both stepping forward. That said, I think that, from my standpoint, when I look at both the qualifications, I would hope and urge that you would vote for Kyla. And I say that because I think that, she offers an awful lot of background in education. I think it's very clear. I think that speaking as a fellow Commonwealth employee, that it's no small task to a director-level position, that I think she's done so. I think she can lend that type of experience that I think would be something that would be of value to the school committee as a taxpayer and as a resident. I'd like to see that type of experience on the school committee as well. So thank you to both, Brendan. Thank you to both of Kyla. I do urge you to please vote for Kyla. Thank you.
Okay, so that is it for public comment? Okay. So just for the next part, I know that the select board's probably done more appointments by far than we have jointly with you. But what we like to do is we like to offer 2 to 3 minutes for each person to come up, introduce yourselves, highlight things that you feel would be important for us to know. And then we will go around and have the opportunity for everybody on both boards to ask questions. Go ahead, Brian.
Is there a third candidate?
So there was a third candidate, but I have not heard anything.
But they're still in the mix, but not here this evening. Is that fair?
That is, yes, that is fair. There actually
Could they
were
be on
4
Zoom?
candidates.
Could they be on Zoom or no?
So I don't know. They are not on the Zoom call. We do have, just for people to know, that Chris Masters is here. We actually had 4 candidates, and one of whom
One withdrew.
One
withdrew.
withdrew, yeah, we got an
Correct.
email.
Did we hear of anyone else withdrawing?
Oh.
Okay.
All right, so did everybody receive the applications that were completed? Okay. So I think, anybody have any questions about the process before we invite the candidates up, or anything that people would like to be sure is part of the process?
I guess what we've usually done, and I think the last time we've done this with you, after everyone's interviewed and asked their questions, we've gone around with a straw poll to see the
Yes.
sense of the room, and then if nobody had a majority, we would go around a second time.
Right. I am just.
Well, I guess if there's only, well, there are technically 3 candidates. So
There are technically 3 candidates. I just was wanting to make sure that everybody has access to, but there are only 2 here in the studio, is my understanding. I'm going to just pull up on my device so I have all of this right in front of me. All right, so Kyla, would you like to come up and speak first?
Good evening. Thanks for having me this evening and accepting my application for school committee. My name is obviously Kyla McSweeney, and as you heard, I am currently working at the Department of Early Education and Care. I'm the Director of Comprehensive System Supports, which really tells you nothing. But one of the things I do is I run a major grant program, which you may have heard the governor talk about, called Gateway to Pre-K. It's part of that program, where we give money to local school districts to expand pre-kindergarten within their communities. I also work in our professional development network system throughout the state. Through this, and these are 2 of many projects, I manage a good 15 different contracts in addition to the Gateway to Pre-K, which we have 30 of them, grants across the state. So it requires significant negotiation and budget experience. I spend a lot of time working with local school districts on their how they're piecing together funding, because our grant is only usually a small part of the funding that they need. They also have to leverage local funds, Chapter 70 funding from the state, and other usually other resources within the town. Some of the times, community programs will do in-kind services because they work with community-based child care programs and Head Start programs as well. So this takes a lot of work and analyzing and being able to go and negotiate with these different parties, and often from people of diverse perspectives that I need to bring together to come to common ground to meet the needs of children in their communities, which is pretty much very similar to the work that you all do on the school committee right now. I also, as I said, I'm an attorney. I used to be a special education attorney for a while, so I have significant understanding of the special education laws and policies. I'm also the parent of a child on an IEP that's been through quite a process. He has complex needs that are not typical profile, so there's a lot of advocating that has to go on with that. And I was a teacher for several different years, have a master's degree in early childhood education, as well as my law degree. My law degree, I also worked on employment policy, employment law, and did negotiations with that, with on union negotiations for that as well. How many, am I almost there? Look at that. So, and I totally lost my train of thought there for a second, excuse me. And I ran a child care center. So going back to the budget experience, for 11 years, I basically ran a small business. I had to do hiring, employee relationships, and then build the budget from bottom up and make sure that we're doing all the spending and everything within parameters. So that's all.
So you ready for questions?
Ready for questions.
Okay.
Can I sit back?
I want to make sure, are you able to hear us, Chris, and clearly?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Do you, because you're remote, do you want to start with any questions for Kyla?
Oh, Nancy, could I just ask?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We have them both come up so they can each answer the same question?
We could, typically, that's not the way we have done it, but we can do it that way. That's fine.
You want-
All right, do you want to sit back down, or do you, so you,
then-
okay, and I don't know if Deborah, anybody has heard anything from Deborah? Okay, all right, so then Brendan would invite you up.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Tedstone. I live on 45 Pleasant Street. I've been in town for a long time, my whole life. The high school in Hopkins School is built on my family's land. My uncle sold the land to the town for the schools. I was a member of the select board. I started as a selectman, went to a select board member. For 6 years, I was a chair for a couple of those years. We were very successful in managing the town. We had a couple of underrides. I was on the elementary school building committee for Marathon School, where we came in $3 million under, which is a feat. And that was after we built 4 classrooms. It was a feat. To ever come in under budget working with a union is not easy. So we did that. I'll never say I had anything to do with it. It's we as a committee. I was a firefighter in town for a number of years, Little League coach, and I've been around here for a long time. I'm a nurse. I started as the trauma director at the maximum security prison out in Shirley when I got my nursing license. Worked out there for a while, and then I got tired of giving good care to bad people. So I wound up going to geriatrics. So I work in geriatrics, where I started as a simple weekend nurse, and then I went to the supervisory role. I took as a nursing director role, moved my way up to a different facility, and now I'm at one of our massive facilities. I've been with this company for 14 years, Marianne Morse, and I am the clinical director of operations. I oversee our facility, which is 490 apartments. And then we have 2 other assisted livings plus a home care. So I'm in charge of the whole thing. I'm in charge of budget, hiring, firing, the whole 9 yards. So we've built a great team together, and you know, it's a very easy job to go to because it's, you know, you're giving good care to good people. They appreciate it, and, you know, the teams that we've put together are pretty solid.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right, so do you want to come back up, Kyla?
Why don't you both just sit here and speak on reason
Sure.
like that? Oh,
All right, so I do still want to go back over to Chris, if that's okay, just because of the remote, in the off chance that we lose connection.
Sure. This is just question period, is that correct?
Yes, if you have
Yeah.
questions to ask of them.
Sure. I guess for Brennan, I mean, both asked kind of a similar question. Brennan, you know, and for both of you, are you guys have the ability to attend the meetings regularly? I couldn't find an attendance report from your time as a select board member. And then for Ms. McSweeney, you know, you obviously, you've seen your resume, you have a demanding job, and given the time constraints of that job, are you going to be able to commit to making meetings regularly, and so we don't run into the problem that we're here replacing a member who couldn't attend regularly?
So for me, yes, actually, very proud to say that in 2 terms as a member on the select board, I never missed a meeting, was never late for a meeting, and I was recognized for that. So yes, I have a schedule that's very flexible. I am able to make meetings and kind of make my own schedule whenever need be.
I too am available for meetings. I'm on the cemetery commission. Our meetings aren't too intense, I can tell you, but I've never missed a cemetery commission meeting. We don't meet that often, but I also have flexibility with my job so that I work from home at least 4 days a week usually, so that I have opportunities to have flexibility with that and be able to make meetings in the evening as appropriate, and then can flex my schedule as well.
We want to go around and then we can come back. Mary Jo, did you have a question?
This is a question for both of them. Given the future, with all the big projects that are going on and all the debt that we are accruing, I want to know, because it's supposed to be one town, you know, one budget, and the schools every year come in well over budget. They're asked to cut, they cut, and we've been having a very good relationship. But I foresee real sacrifices coming up shortly, and I'd like to know how each of you feels we should handle that.
I think I did significant talking about this during my campaign for select board, but to talk more about that, I do think I have been very proud, and you heard me during my select board campaign to support the schools and their projects. I think it's first and foremost for our town that we need to really support the future of this town, which is the children. And with that said, we have a number of different priorities. The tax burden is getting huge, as you know, on seniors, because you've been working on that. A lot of people are talking about how tax burden is getting, and I do think that continuing to do big projects is going to be very difficult in this climate in the town. I think we need to support the projects that we have begun and have continued, and then we need to start talking about where we're going to have those tough decisions and going forward in the community, while still maintaining great support. We have a wonderful school system, and we need to put that foremost, but not overspend.
So I feel the exact same way. What I've neglected to say during my opening 2 minutes is that I do have 2 kids in the schools. I have one that's a junior, one that's going into a freshman. So having the school, like, I've seen this town grow from the year I was graduating high school. I think we were about 74 kids in the class. I'm still friends with all of them, I think. Up to my son's graduation from 8th grade this year, there were, I don't know, 300 or 400 kids there. It was amazing. The schools are really what's driving this town. Now, it's driving our property values, so it's driving, you know, it's bringing in some very quality people to that want to raise their kids here and to go to schools here. And it's up to us to foster that environment and to maintain it and grow it. But at the expense of, we talk about when we were on the select board, when I first started on the select board, we always talked about level services versus level funding. We need to grow with our neighborhoods and with our community, but we have to be responsible with our spending. The fact that we were $3 million under on that school project is pretty impressive for that committee. But obviously anybody that's getting on the school committee, their heart is in it for the schools. And although my kids are going to be out of school in 2 and 4 years, there's nothing to say that in 15 or 20 years, if I decide to retire from the school board at that point, I can hang my hat and say there's been 5 schools built and our property values are here and our school ranking is still number 1. And Carol Kavanaugh is finally getting ready to retire and blah, blah, blah. So that's my thoughts on that.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you both for stepping forward, and the third candidate too. And it's great to have such strong candidates for such an important role. So we have making our job difficult. Thank you for that. It's a good problem to have, and we take that any day with great candidates. What I was going to ask is, tell us about your vision for our school. As we all know, we love our school. It's our one of the greatest assets. And we are at a juncture where we are seeing challenges with growth, with budget, and our capital projects coming in line. Now we are mostly, I'm hoping, done with our school's big capital projects. But there would be, of course, with the growth and other things that we have to do and maintain for the excellence. But how do you map your vision to the current state of things and also to your experience and expertise?
So I think everybody in this room is under the impression that we want to stay as the number 1 ranking in the state. No question about that. What we need to do is we need to stay there and maintain that by spending effectively and responsibly. On the select board, we were able to get an exemption for some of the seniors that, like, I don't mind paying, with the new school coming on, I don't mind paying $1,000, $1,500 a year additional, in order to let my kids have such a wonderful education and live in such a great town. But I always use, there's a woman in town that recently passed, Mary Harrington, and I always said, if we're building these schools and fire stations and police stations and DPWs and libraries, how is that, when that tax bill hit, how is that going to affect Mary Harrington or some of these people that have lived here for generations that are on a very, very fixed income that literally it's a matter of, being able to go out to eat once a month or, fund the new DPW garage. And we were very effective in being able to get that. The water and sewer rates, we were able to get rebates for them and making so they weren't responsible for some of these increases. The schools are everything in town. My house when I built my house in 2006, it's times 9. The value of it has gone times 9. And that's in no small part due to the schools and the performance of our school department and teachers and teaching the kids. And we need to keep that going, but we need to spend financially very responsibly in order to keep that going.
Thank you.
Great. As a vision, I imagine a time when all these school build projects will be done and the children have the space that they need to learn and grow and develop. I've been over at, my daughter just left Hopkins. I've been in her classroom, which had no windows, and it's crowded, and it's not the most optimal place, but she still got a really great education there. And then go to my son's IEP meeting in the middle school, and it's like going into the mosh pit out of a concert. When when the periods change, you're like, "Well, I'm going to get run over by all these big kids." So I think that's going to be amazing as we go through. I also think that Hopkinton's a great place. This is a great place. We have many students. We have students that are going to, like, if you watch the parade for senior graduation, they're going to incredible colleges and universities all across the United States. And so many of our kids are thriving, but there's still some kids in Hopkinton that aren't thriving. And there's pockets of kids that still need some extra support. And I think there's still some work to do in areas that how are we meeting the needs of all of our students in Hopkinton? Diversity has exploded in town. How are we meeting the needs of those diverse students? And I think in a vision that I have for our Hopkinton Public Schools, all those kids are achieving as much as the kids that we see going off to Harvard and Yale and Princeton and all that. Wonderful things, whether they choose to go into, the military or as an electrician or whatever, all of our students need to have the preparation that they deserve and the support that they feel from the whole community.
Thank you.
Okay, so I was going to ask a little bit about, so in recent years, Hopkinton has grown a lot. That's an understatement. And, but it's brought some welcome diversity to town that we didn't have before, like when Brendan grew up here. And which has brought opportunities and challenges. And what could you do, and if you were to have a role in the school committee, to make our new demographics feel more welcome and supported in town, either from a policy standpoint or a budget standpoint?
So I'm going to bring back to a time at the child care center I worked in. When I first, the child care center I managed was at Newton Wellesley Hospital. So we had a clientele that was employees of the hospital. And when I first started, we didn't have a very diverse background. Most of our students were white. Most of them spoke English, and most of them were of wealthy families. During my time there, we significantly increased, so much that about 30% of our population didn't speak English as their first language during my time there. And we had extremely a diverse set of families as well, family dynamics as well. And part of my job was making sure that these people were both attracted to our program, so that we were having curriculum and support that allowed them to feel comfortable in our program, and also the families felt supported while they were in our program. So I think that both the climate that you have introduced and then what is happening within your schools, I think can do a lot for diverse populations.
So I think that Hopkinton, as Amy said, when I grew up here, it was very, very different. But I think that Hopkinton has certainly extended an olive branch, and I think that they do a wonderful job, or everybody here does a wonderful job accepting everybody. I sit and I listen to my son or daughter come home from school and tell me stories of what happened, and just the fact that they can pronounce some of these names it's such an incredible, like Dr. Kavanaugh and even before her, Kathy McLeod, did such a great job of really including everybody in everything and educating and bringing people into the, whether, there was some issues with 9/11. There's always been issues where people put walls up. And I think that it's the norm now, where it used to be an anomaly, it's a norm now for people to stand up to people that don't accept that. And the fact that it's a norm, I've seen my son stand up to people that are acting foolish, saying foolish things, which as a 6th, 7th, 8th grader, they probably don't even know what they're saying. But it's amazing to see how we have come together as a community where we welcome everybody. And there's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be outliers. But I think in general, the town has done a wonderful job kind of getting everybody together and accepting all.
Thank you.
Kind of like Mr. Mannon said, I'm very excited to see both of you here. I know both of you the last couple months especially. I think we have two very qualified candidates for this, so I'm very excited for the town, for this committee. With this position being a short-term one, less than a year to fill the gap, Specifically, we have a big event coming up in the fall with the HTA contract negotiation. Can you please tell me like what skill and approach you would bring to that negotiation on behalf of the town?
So in my role as in the public sector, I negotiate, like when I was in the prison system, we were a state of Mass employee through UMass. So I was the union rep there that we would do the negotiations. I was a hockey player. I always did the negotiations, on our teams when we were doing the hockey. And as a select board member, we did work with the budgets. We did negotiate contracts with DPW, police, fire, and the negotiations have to be firm but respectful. And I think that is a huge part of the role that either Kyla or I will fill for the rest until May. I think that's going to be a huge piece doing this contract for the school. So I am very well versed in negotiating. I have done negotiating for, let's say, 30 years professionally, and I'm pretty, I do a lot of legwork. I do my research. I try to go into these things as educated as I can, but keep my ears and eyes open and go through the negotiation process like that. But I consider myself firm but fair as a negotiator.
So as an attorney, I have a great deal of experience in negotiating and having conversations like this and working on things like this. I think my supervisor will tell you that one of the greatest skills I bring to negotiations in my position right now is the ability to develop relationships and make people feel like they are heard. When people feel like they are heard and respected in a process, you're able to increase your position in negotiating with them. And I think that is really important. Amy talked a little bit about my calm demeanor. I think that has been extremely important during my process with negotiations and working with difficult situations and conversations. I don't tend to get all excited or get upset about things. I'm able to maintain a calm demeanor and really work on that relationship and have those conversations that are difficult sometimes and where you need to draw a line that's hard in the sand, but you're also being respectful to the person that you're negotiating with. I do think that in our upcoming negotiations with the HTA, that we really need to make sure that they feel both respected and valued by us. We want to make sure that our schools retain the excellent talent that we have in our teachers, because that's what makes our schools pretty good. It's not the shiny marathon school that we built a few years ago. It's really the teachers that make our schools number one in this town.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Thank you both for being here tonight. You are making this very difficult. Thank you for that, too. My question is a little bit of a follow-on to Joe's. I'm a huge fan of the Hopkinton teachers. I have 5 kids all out now and all doing great. Thank you to the Hopkinton teachers for all they did. I'm a huge fan of the Hopkinton administrators, the principals, vice principals, athletic directors, the whole 9 yards. Big fans of everybody there. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Kavanaugh and Susan and all those that came before you and all the school committees members today, and all those school committee members that came before you guys. We have a fabulous system here in Hopkinton because the residents of Hopkinton, 1, expect it, 2, support it, and put their money where their mouth is pretty routinely to make sure the schools get what they need. And I think we've all done a fabulous job. So love the teachers, love the HTA that's done a really nice job representing them over the years, I think, and a reasonable job representing them over the years, and certainly love the administration. So my question might be a little loaded after I said all that. What are your thoughts about the Massachusetts Teachers Association?
So I have significant interaction with the Massachusetts Teachers Association in my work because first of all, a lot of my colleagues are members of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, and although I am not, so I am very respectful of their thoughts and opinions of the Massachusetts Teacher Association. I do believe that each contract needs to be looked at individually, and that you cannot look at one town's contract versus another town's contract and get the same sort of feeling from them or the same experience from them. I think that's all I want to say.
So with the MTA, I think it's, it's equally as important to value what they bring to the table as well as the Hopkinen teachers, as they all kind of have to work together. We have to, come up with a contract. If the teachers came up with a contract that wanted, 30, 30, and 30 for the next 3 years, we came up with 0, 0, 0. We're going to have to do some pretty significant negotiating. But I think that there's a lot of boilerplate stuff that the MTA probably puts out that the HCA uses. And, they all kind of feed together, work together. And like Kyla said, I think the important part is to understand that, like, this isn't an individual negotiation for Hopkinen, but it is, it's a statewide, it's involved with the statewide, the MTA.
Mr. Tadstone, have you ever sat at a union negotiating table?
I have.
For which union?
So the PHPA, the Professional Hockey Players Association, and I worked with the, as I said, I was the union rep when I was a nurse for for UMass, for the Department of Corrections.
What did you find to be the most difficult part at the table?
I would say when either your players or your employees that you work with, your peers, expect you to go in and bring back the whole basket. And when you have to go back to them and say, we wanted ABC all the way through Z, they were happy to give us A through F. We had to give G through M, but N through P. So it's the give and take. The rank and file, they want the take, but they don't like the give. So it's having to explain why we negotiated, why we settled for this, versus, why we didn't get the whole kit and caboodle.
Ms. McSweeney, as an attorney, I'm sure you do a lot of negotiating in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Have you sat as part of in a bargaining situation?
No, not directly.
Okay.
I did, as an attorney, represent SEIU members, but I was not at the bargaining table with them.
Okay, so you've had to deal with grievances and things like that?
Yes.
As an SCU?
SEIU?
Okay.
Service Employees Industrial Union.
Okay. Thank you.
I have different questions for each of you. Okay. Ms. McSweeney, as you may know, special education is deeply important to me, and I think strong special education department is integral to a healthy and successful district. At this time of tremendous district growth and building maintenance and replacement needs, smart budgeting is incredibly important also. Given your extensive experience with education budgets, can you describe your process or approach to ensure student needs are met while upholding fiscal responsibility to the community?
Well, a lot of our spending in special education is to meet federal and state requirements, and sometimes there's not a lot of variability you can have in that, correct? Because you need to meet what's required by federal and state law in children's IEPs. How you do that, you have a little flexibility in how you manage and create your different programs to meet those needs, but you still have to make sure that you have the hours and the time and the ratios and staff that have the skills that are written into children's IEPs. So that's sort of a balance. And I think Hopkinton has done a good job at prioritizing their special education spending in their budget. And we hope that we can continue that. There has been times when, a few years ago when it was a difficult fight, but we were able to work it out through different negotiations. And I hopefully that process can continue.
Can we give Mr. Tedstone the opportunity to answer that as well?
Sure.
Why don't you go ahead and repeat that question?
Can you describe your process or approach to ensure student needs are met while upholding fiscal responsibility to the community in the context of special education?
Well, I mean, special education is giant. I know it's a big draw to the budget, but it's one of the most, I feel, one of the most important parts of our schools. I was able to watch my daughter coach or work in the unified basketball this year, and it was, I've done a lot with sports in my whole life, and it was by far the most uplifting thing to see how the kids, the buddies would partner with the athletes and see these kids play and work and score their first basket, and it borderline brought tears to your eyes watching these games. And I think Hopkinton does a great job managing the special ed part. Dr. Kavanaugh's predecessor, Kathy McLeod, I have a friend of mine that owns a corporation, a huge corporation, and his son had some special needs and came through the schools and did great. And this guy offered, I don't know, $400,000 or $500,000 gift to replace all the equipment, the landscape managing equipment, because his son did such a great job in Hopkinton. He moved on to Leslie College. He did a great job, and he's doing a great job with this corporation. Special ed is giant. It's giant, and we all talk about no one left behind, no kid left behind. Nothing says that more than how we work with our special ed kids.
I do have a different question for you. And to start, I will say that as an occupational therapist who worked with the VNA locally for many years before moving to teaching myself, I had patients who loved Marianne Morse.
Good.
So I know it's a wonderful facility. So my question that I had designed for you, but welcome to both. On school committee, we address items that people in our community feel passionately about. Mm-hmm. It's important that we can disagree respectfully and move forward with our united purpose of mindfully supporting our school district to promote every student's success. If you think back on your presence in youth sports and other activities in public, how important is it to be a good role model and set positive examples to students and youth outside of meetings when serving on school committee? What are some characteristics of a good role model, or what does being a good role model mean to you?
So, so I have coached youth hockey, youth baseball. I did not coach youth soccer. I know by looking at me, you think I'm a natural soccer player, but I'm not. I would lead by example. I would, to me, somebody who's played sports at a rather competitive level, winning and losing games at this level is not a big deal to me. It's more about, and I still, to this day, I still coach, travel baseball, softball. And it's more about, teaching the kids right and wrong, do your best. By all means, we keep score, so I do try to win. And I like to impart that on the kids. It is important to have, to know what it feels like to lose, to win and lose graciously. As Mr. Memo might know, we lost very graciously last year when I coached this kid in Babe Ruth every single game that we played. But we did it as gracefully as we could. So it's important. It's important.
Thank you.
So I'm a Girl Scout leader. And I think that kind of shows some of my commitment to the community and able to that. But I also like to point to my time in my campaign for our select board. I'm really proud of the way that we conducted the campaign, and we're able to have reasonable and respectful discourse amongst the four of us, even if we didn't agree all the time on different issues and situations that went on. And I think that shows a little bit about my character and my ability as we move about the community to uphold those.
Thank you.
So my question's a little bit different. I appreciate, like some people have said before, both of you stepping up. I think you both make a very hard choice for us to make, which is, I think a good problem to have. One concern that I have had just in the time that I have been on the school committee is the amount of turnover that we've had over the recent few years, where we've had people who are unable to complete their term for one reason or another. It makes it disruptive, I think would be at least, and it puts us, in a position where we will have more new members on the board than we have people who are returning at this point. So two things. One is there something that makes you passionate to come to the table at this point that would make you perhaps consider running for reelection and to want to stick through this? Or does this feel like just stretching to the end of this term, which would be the election would come up in May? Whoever wants to go first.
So I just ran for the select board, so I know the question is, are you going to bounce ship and run for the select board again?
That was not what I was. That was not where I was going.
That's what I was expecting to be asked today. But I feel that making this commitment for the school committee, that I need to see my term through, and even more to actually dedicate myself and to continue on to this committee. I was asked the same with the cemetery commission. If I was elected to either the select board or the school committee, would I go and quit that? And I'm sticking with the cemetery commission. As I said, you kind of do that with doing something else because it's not that difficult. I'm chair of the cemetery commission right now, by the way. Very exciting position in town.
People are dying to get in.
Yes. Well, we like to say our constituents don't complain, unlike other committees, but it's not always true. So yes, I don't see anything that. Oh, and you asked what makes us passionate. So it's a really exciting time to be in school committee right now. We have got 2 big school building projects. What town has 2 big school building projects going on right now? You have an upcoming, well, some people might be scared away about upcoming union negotiations. That's kind of exciting for a legal nerd like myself. There's some meaty stuff to get involved in, and I think that is what drives my passion to get involved at this time.
So as far as finishing my term, yeah, I've got at least, like I said, my son's going to be a freshman this year, so we got 4 years of high school, 4 years college, probably some grad school, so I'm here for at least another 10, 15 years, I would say, God willing. So I'm not going anywhere. I have had a passion for this town since I was just a young kid, a very young kid. And I got as a volunteer in the fire department when I was 18 years old. I worked on that as long as I could. My schedule didn't really, at that point where I traveled a lot, it didn't allow me to stay with it. However, once you have me as a friend or as a partner or constituent, you have me forever. I did not want to leave the Board of Selectmen, but I'm a firm believer that after a certain amount of time, it's time to go. And I think the 2 terms was fine with me, and I thought that there were a lot of new people coming in with a lot of fresher ideas that might have benefited the town, so I stepped away. For the schools, it's the same thing. I'm going to see it through, and I would love to, at some point when I die, I'd love to have a rock put on the common saying that this knucklehead did this, 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 and this for the town, and thank you very much. It's a huge part for me. It's not just for the schools, it's for the town of Hopkinton, it's for me. I teach my son and my daughter also that it's very important to give back. My son, we do some work for some people in town that are going through tough times. We try to help them out a little bit. And my daughter, same thing. She does a lot with the Unified group. And I think it's just very important to give back. I have the ability to give back. I have some institutional knowledge in the town, which helps and hurts. To be quite honest, I think that I'm very progressive on, working with people and working with committees. But when I go to the Wayback Machine in my head, I'm like, well, when I was in high school, we didn't do it this way. Well, when you're in high school, you had 9 people. So yeah, I think you know, my dedication to the town is unwavering. And once I commit to something, I'm there. Like I said, I never missed a meeting in 6 years on the Board of Selectmen and Select Board, and, you know, I took my first sick day in 14 years last year when I got COVID. So once I commit to it,
Thank you. So just want to do a scan of the room if there was anything else that people feel was not. Chris, are you looking to?
Yeah, I just had one other question for Ms. McSweeney. You know, I don't view the school committee as a partisan or political entity, and nor do I think it should be. I did see that the HTTC was encouraging members to speak tonight publicly and send emails to the school committee and possibly the select board. So a little concerning to me, and just wanted to hear from you how we can be assured that you'll act independently and not be influenced by maybe what the HTTC would like to see happen on the school committee.
I can assure you that we within the Hopkinton Democratic Town Committee have differing viewpoints often, and no one sets any sort of agenda for anybody who's serving in any office who has any affiliation with the Hopkinton Democratic Town Committee. And so I come with no preset agenda, and they are simply supportive of me as a colleague and friend.
I don't know,
Thanks.
Mr. Tedstone, if you wanted to add anything about political affiliation.
yeah, so the town Democratic Committee does not influence my decision-making.
Fair. All right, so we've had some pretty extensive questions. We have lots of information ahead of us. I think we're ready to go ahead and make a straw vote unless anybody has any other. Okay. So going to start
Can
with
we
you
make-
down.
Sorry, Nancy,
Yeah.
can we make like comments before we?
Yes, so yeah, absolutely. Would invite people to make comments in what your thoughts are and your thought process. It's not a binding thing. It's kind of what you're leaning towards, what you feel is in the best interest of the school committee, the schools, and ultimately the town, and the best fit for being on the school committee at this point. So, Chris, again, I'm always mindful of the fact that you're outside of my line of view, so I want to make sure
Yeah.
that we start with you. So we don't-
Sure. Yeah, I think as members of the school committee and select board, we were elected really to represent the interests of the citizens of the town. You know, I like elections. I'd much prefer if this was an election to replace the school committee member, but I know the protocol is for us to vote and appoint someone. However, I did think back on it, and we do, in my opinion, have a pretty clear mandate from the people of the town that have had a chance to vote for two of the applicants, and twice the town has spoken and overwhelmingly voted in Brendan Tedstone in elections that were a crowded field of 4 people. He had the most votes in each election. You know, and as I look back on that, you know, the town had a chance to kind of voice who they want representing the town. And I think we have two obviously very qualified candidates. But for me, you know, Mr. Tedstone's really the only one who received overwhelming support from the town. And I would, you know, urge the other committee members and select board members to really keep that in mind. In a situation where we don't have a dedicated election for this position, the town did have a chance, you know, in recent years to kind of voice their opinion for at least two of the candidates who have raised their hand for the school committee position.
Thank you, Chris. Mary Jo, do you want to go next, or is there somebody else that wants to jump in?
Yeah, I have another question.
Okay, go right ahead, that's fine.
I come from a town, 2 towns away. And my parents were like all parents, like these parents, and we have beautiful new schools, and we spent a lot of money and in the town and everything. And then 40 years ago, I moved here, but the town got older, and 5 schools that I went to are gone. they've been turned into something else, or they're gone. And I think moving forward in the future, I want to know how people feel about doing things temporary or more modular. I'm glad we have modular in one of our buildings. And what can we do? And now we have 2 empty schools, are going to be empty. And I mean, I'm just looking at these buildings have all been converted. Well, some of them are nothing. One's a ball field that got taken down, but 5, and now they have to build a couple of new schools. But it's just the way populations go. If the population here gets really older, the number of students is going to come down. And I really think that looking to the future, we have to look at, do we continue on this road, or do we get to a point where we say we've got to do something new and something different? So I'm just looking for some ideas.
So can I just jump in ahead of them, for clarity? We actually have modular classrooms on 2 of our buildings.
Right.
And at the Elmwood School, there are modulars that will be moved from the Elmwood School to the Hopkins School at the end of, once the now the Charleswood School opens.
Yeah. It's the beginning, and with the, like I said, the seniors. And I don't want people to take what we have done for the seniors and the exemptions that we have made are not going to make huge differences to them. And part of that is because we are not allowed to put a price or an amount on them that we want to. We have to follow the state guidelines for exemptions, and they're very, very, very small, actually. So if anybody wants to deal with the legislature and tries to find a way to make that a more home rule idea, then I would appreciate that too. So, what do you think?
Well, I'll try to decipher that. I don't, so the one thing I was going to point up that we have a lot more modular classrooms than just the 2 schools. But I disagree that, the population's going to get older and go away.
We don't know it. It's
Right,
an unknown.
it's an opinion. However, as the town, as you've seen, when I was growing up, my mother had the house, where we grew up, raised us. We hit college, we hit adulthood, we got our own place. My mom's still there. So in that demographic, it would, like in that, to follow that, it would absolutely, we're being built out. We're not going to have that much room. The growth is going to slow. However, in today's society in Hopkinton, it's not uncommon for people to come into the town for the schools, go through the schools, and then rather than have your kids go out either and start their own lives in their own houses, they'll sell their house to another family that comes in with 2 kids that want to start in the pre-K, and then, so, my mother, at the house that we grew up in, they were, the town lost money putting us through the school system because there were just 2 of us and the taxes were, it was what it was. Once we left, my mother was still paying the taxes in town, but she wasn't taking advantage of the services. There weren't more kids coming in. I think, Dr. Kavanaugh, you'll know, it's like $15,000 a year to put a student through school.
Just slightly under 16.
So that's a $30,000 draw at my house on Chamberlain Street that was gone, but my mother remained and still paid the taxes, the same taxes, whether we had 2 kids in or not. Now, as the children branch out and go do their own thing, they generally sell their house and buy a brownstone in Boston, and another family comes in with a kindergarten-age kid or 2 or 3 or 4, and you're not treading water. You're not underspending and then overspending. You're always going to be a financial burden moving forward. So, and with our school staying as the #1 rank, it's very attractive for people to come in from everywhere to come live in Hopkinton. And I believe that cycle will continue as long as our school ranking is as positive as it is.
I agree. That's been what has been happening recently, and there could be, schools, and looking at populations, a difficult thing to nail. If you've sat through the building committee presentations, there's demographer, you know, trying to make predictions about things, and right now, nobody's been right. Mr. Clark and I had a conversation the other day about this and saying, you know, let's hope we're getting it right. And hey, if we have a little too much room in our schools, that's not a bad thing, because I think our teachers and educational leaders can be really creative about how they use that space in the schools and how they're managing different programs within that. And that also might be able to help with some of our other budget pieces with that in our programming. So it is a fluid thing. It's hard to nail down, and I think we need to forecast and think about that and how we can manage that and how we can make use of the space.
Thank you.
Did you want to add any comment and it come back to you in the straw
We
poll?
have two great candidates. It takes a little while to digest this.
Okay,
Very
so we'll
good.
circle back to you.
Very good, yes,
Okay.
please.
So we're making our comments and our selections, initial selections?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, we have two great candidates and very thoughtful and well thought out discussion response, and making it even more difficult. So thank you for that. But yeah, this is great. I'm really happy to see both very competent candidates. And before I talk about my selection or my choice, I want to make it very clear that I do commend both of your services. Brendan, you've been involved for such a long time, great contribution to our community. Thank you for the service at Select Board and other places. And I've worked with you and got an opportunity to know you. And I've found Brendan nothing but very kind and dedicated for the town. So I want to make sure that's also out there. Just because we are having a contested position and selection shouldn't take our eyes off of everyone's contribution and everyone's qualification and dedication. So certainly appreciate that. And Kyla has also demonstrated great service to the town, and knowing her personally, I know she's been very vocal about causes, schools, SPED, and is a wonderful candidate. And the second thing I also wanted to bring up is that I am certainly thinking through and processing a lot. And my thinking is always focused on what's best for the town and what is the best suitability of the position for the time and for the based on the criteria we are thinking and the qualifications that we have. And there's no pressure on me from anything or anyone. And people who know me and knows my life story or been in town for the last 6 months knows that I know a thing or two about pressure. But it's completely independent thinking. And then coming back to this, I do feel that, again, both are extremely strong candidates. I am looking at a portfolio of criteria where I want to see, educational background. The negotiation is definitely one big item. The budget and understanding of the town mechanics, where you both have been very strong. And I loved your vision, and definitely you're passionate. We both have kids in school. Where I see a little bit differentiating, and this is very hard again, I think as it will be for all my colleagues, is that Kyla's educational affiliation background and insight certainly stands out. And Brendan certainly has other forte and strengths. For the school board, for that reason, Kyla stood out a little bit more suitable in my mind.
Okay. So I want to thank you both for your patience, and you both answered all our questions really thoughtfully, so I really appreciate that. But I don't want to drag this out much longer, but my vote tonight would go for Kyla. And I think they both would be qualified, they both have the experience, but my vote is for Kyla tonight.
So I think we talked about a lot tonight. Again, thank you both, extremely qualified. I go back to kind of what's best for the town, and I'm thinking about the schools. The schools have always been the backbone of this community. They will continue to be so. It's why Hopkinton is the town it is today. And the town has supported that. We've seen that. We've got two very exciting school projects coming up. I think everyone in town is excited to see those come to fruition. But as we take on the debt for those things, I think it's also a time for the schools to support the town as well. And with that in mind, again, I know both these candidates would be great on this committee. But specifically, I'm looking at things, again, I brought up, the labor negotiation this fall, and I look at the rest of the committee, and as Nancy pointed out before, there's been a lot of turnover. And one of the things that I like that we have on multiple boards and committees is diversity of backgrounds and opinions. And outside of Nancy, I don't see a ton of experience negotiating on behalf of the town. We can all talk about negotiating in our private sector jobs, it's what I do daily. I don't pretend to know what it's like to negotiate on behalf of Hopkinton. I think that's a very different thing. That's a learned experience. And so looking again at this labor negotiation coming up, I think it would be very helpful to have someone that's been in a position to negotiate on behalf of this town before. And that's why I would vote for Brendan tonight, for that reason specifically.
So if this was not a contract negotiation year, and we were picking a school committee member for another year that would run again and have like a 4-year term, if you will, my vote would be for Kyla, because I think as a school committee member, a generalist, if you will, I think she could be a great fit. And I think her background and knowledge of how it all works, as an educator herself, and with that experience and passion in her law degree and negotiation and so forth, I think all that would be a great asset to the community. So I hope, if it plays out in certain ways, that is a future opportunity for the town. And I think the town would embrace that at that time. Given that it is a contract negotiation year, given that I have sat with Mr. Tedstone and dealt with contract negotiations on behalf of the town of Hopkinton, I support him for this particular 8 or 9 month gig.
I'm particularly partial to Ms. McSweeney. I have sat at contract negotiations for teachers. I know what that's like. I know that it is always important to have someone who has the legal knowledge and the technicality of wording to help you out with situations. I am also extremely impressed with Ms. McSweeney's resume and her ability to deal with $1 million plus budgets and knowing what is necessary. I think she would also understand that if we do not meet the needs of the students, if things become tight, certain sacrifices would be very difficult to make in terms of teacher numbers and things like that might have to come down to it. So my vote would be with Ms. McSweeney.
Thank you both for being here. I am also preferring Kyla tonight. I think the resume and consistent integrity through a difficult process during the last election and dedication to moving forward with school committee, plus all the contract negotiation and the legal expertise is quite valuable. I appreciate you both for coming forward.
So want to echo all those before me that really are grateful for both of you for standing up. I think it makes a tough choice. I think you both offer some really strong things that would be beneficial to the school committee. In an ideal world, we'd be able to choose both of you. Really, I would enjoy being colleagues with either one of you. A couple of things that have been said have stood out to me. One is that it's not a political position, and I appreciate that that has been brought out. Just in terms of, we all come from slightly different backgrounds. We do probably lean more one way than another. I would say there are a lot of things about each of you that probably not everybody knows. I've known Mr. Tedstone probably a little bit longer, but I've also come into contact with you at many different school things, and most recently the forums that we had for the schools. I think there are some things about Mr. Tedstone that I think you have a quiet way sometimes of, and I don't think quiet is always the word that comes to mind when people think of you, but there are quiet things that I know that you do behind the scenes. I'm thinking of, for folks who were at the Loudermill hearing, my understanding was that you walked select board members out who might not have otherwise felt like it was an opportune thing to do. I thought that was a stand-up thing. I would say that my preference for this remainder of this term until May would be for Brendan, and the reason for that is not based just on qualifications for either of you. It's really based on, and it's not the contract negotiations alone, because I do think contract negotiations are a big piece of it. But if we rewind a little bit back to December, when we were sitting here making an appointment for the school committee at that time as well, the piece going into the budget and the experience with budget, when we have already two people who are new to this process, I think that having somebody who's been through it is an asset. I appreciate that both of you are willing and interested in seeking to continue on with the school committee. I hope that both of you will step up again in May. But so that would be my piece. And I believe that circles back to Mary Jo.
Wow. I mean, this is just incredible. Kaylee's a friend of mine, makes me an Irish bread, going to make me scones. I mean, if that's a bribe, it's a good one. But, and I've known Brendan since he was a little boy. His mother and I used to sit out at the baseball games together because I had two boys of that age too, and his brother Luke. And we served as select people. I have great respect for both people. And boy, do we have two outstanding candidates tonight.
Yes, we do.
And it's really very, very difficult for me. But I know that Kayla has wanted to get really involved in the town, and I think this is the position for her right now. So I would vote for Kayla tonight.
Okay, so that brings us down to appear to have a 5-4 split on that, just by my count. There may be people who were swayed by the arguments of others that spoke earlier, but I would seek if there's somebody who would like to make a motion, or if there, before we go into a motion, if there's anybody who wanted to make any other comments before we go into an actual decision. Okay. Is there somebody who would like to make a motion to appoint the next?
I can do that. I make the motion to appoint Kyla McSweeney for the school board member position.
Okay, so a motion by Shahidul. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Second by
Do we need to
Susan.
say expiring at the,
Expiring at the annual town election. Okay, so since we do have a member who is remote, we are going to go around and do a roll call vote. So we'll start with you, Chris. It's a motion to appoint Kyla. I didn't hear. So yes or no is the,
No, sorry.
okay, yep,
Yep,
no, that's
no.
okay. Okay, so we'll go to Mary Jo.
Yes. Mary Jo Brenner, yes.
Okay, Shahidul.
Shahidul Manan, yes.
Amy Ritterbush, yes?
Joe Clark, no.
Brian Herr, no?
Susan Stevenson, yes.
Jamie Bronca, yes.
And I am a no, so that brings us back to, I believe, the 5-4 split. Okay. Thank you both very much. That puts Kyla in the 5-4 split. I do appreciate that we were able to express all of our opinions and that we came out with one person who will be joining us. So the next steps for you would be to see our town clerk, or probably our assistant town clerk at this point, to be sworn in. And then we do have a meeting. Our next meeting that's scheduled is for July 25th. It's actually a daytime meeting. So thank you both for being
Thank you
here
both.
tonight. It was a long process.
Congratulations, guys.
Congratulations.
Thank you all. So the select board will adjourn. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
No, motion by Amy, second by
Move to
Mary
adjourn
Jo.
the select board meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and thank you to the select board. Appreciate that.
Have a good night.
Tyrone, Susan.
Thanks, you as well.
Oh, hi. Nice
Joe,
to see you.
Great to meet
Yep.
you guys.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you all. Have a good night.
Nice to meet you. Look forward to seeing you more in the fall for our budget stuff.
See you guys.
See ya. All right. So That then brings us into reports.
Okay.
I should have got this cooking earlier. It was there and oh, there it goes. Okay.
All right, so thank you. This is the superintendent's report for Thursday, July 11th, 2024. And one of the things that's interesting about the superintendent's report in the summertime is that you struggle a little bit because not a lot is going on in our public schools. However, just in the last couple of weeks, in dribs and drabs, data starts coming into my inbox, and I thought, some of the stuff that people are sending me in terms of the data that they keep within their departments or about the kids is really very interesting, and so I thought I would just share some of that with you tonight. So we did look at a little bit of this. The high school guidance department will send out a report at the end of every school year, just letting us know how many students went off to four-year colleges, two-year colleges. And I like what Lee Greco does here because she'll tell you the number of students and then she'll also tell you the percentage of the class. We had 280 students in this graduating class. We have 95% of them, or 266 students who are going on to further education. Some of the interesting data there might be that our international students, you know that we have them every year, 5 of them have decided to return home, and that's 2% of the graduating class. 2% of our kids, also 5 students, are going on to a gap year, for example. So that's what's happening with the class of 2024. She also gives us the college testing report so that we have a sense of how our kids, and really pretty much in terms of the mean, are doing on the ACT, the pre-ACT, the PSAT, and the SAT. It's always kind of neat to look at the PSAT. So our kids are taking this typically when they're 10th graders. And on the evidence-based reading and writing test, the mean is at 588. But by the time they're juniors and seniors and they take the SAT, that number goes to 631. The PSAT is the qualifying test to become a National Merit Scholar. We had 18 commended students this year, 5 semifinalists, and that constitutes 8.2% of the class of 2024. And I'm not sure what people know about being a National Merit Scholar, but it is super competitive to get to that level, I think, of knowledge. And so it's really impressive to have 8.2% of your graduating class reach that milestone for National Merit, whether it's commended, semifinalist, or finalist. We have also started to gather some preliminary ELA MCAS data. And I know that you can't see that up on that screen because it's very far away from you. But if you've been on the committee for some time, you know that one of the things that we've been working really hard on is getting our kids to do more writing and writing in the service of reading. It has lived in my goals for the last couple of years. And we did bring on 3 years ago a director of literacy at the middle school level. So this is preliminary MCAS data. It's not likely to change, but because it's preliminary and it hasn't been, fully vetted and released yet. But one of the nice things that we are seeing is that, so the average percent of possible points. So for example, if you could get 20 points and you only got 10, we would say that you are at the 50th percent. And what we've done is we've crunched those numbers for the entire 6th grade, the entire 7th grade, and the entire 8th grade for writing. In 2023, the percentage was 48 in grade 6. This year it's at 60. In grade 7, it was at 54 last year. And that was actually significantly higher than it had been the previous year. So we were excited about the 7th grade scores last year, and that's risen to 57 this year. And in the 8th grade, it was at 48% last year. And now this year, the 8th graders in the aggregate got 56% of the possible points. So that's really exciting data, and it's going to be interesting to see what that does to our overall ELA MCAS scores at the middle school level. Mr. Bishop was good enough to take some of the preliminary high school ELA MCAS scoring numbers, and in 2023, 1% of our kids were not meeting expectations. This year, no one was there.
10% were partially meeting, and this year it's 7.7%. So when we take a look at this 11 and we look at that 7.7, now when we go to our meeting and exceeding expectations, it was 89 in 2023, which is enormously high. We felt great about that 89%. It was a much bigger number than it had been historically, and this year, I really had goosebumps when I started to look at those numbers. The grade 10 students were at 92.3% meeting and exceeding, which is astounding. Typically way more than 10% of the population, the adult population in the world, is not reading at a 12th grade level, and our kids are right there, and so it feels really good. And I want to thank the high school teachers, the subject matter leaders, the assistant principals, Mr. Bishop, Sarah Elam, who is the English department chair there, and of course, Mr. Lebrad. These numbers are phenomenal. I can't wait to see Mr. Lebrad's report in the fall, because I think it's going to look phenomenal. Our middle school librarian keeps data, which I didn't know she did, but she does. This year, she had 950 students out of the 997 actually use the middle school library. Physically, they checked out 3,392 books. The majority of those books were graphic novels and manga. She herself taught 230 lessons. In addition to checking out all of those physical books, they have online resources. She checked out 15,016 ebooks, 58 magazines, 1,262 audiobooks, and 150 classroom books. So there is a lot of literacy going on there, and she added 753 books to the collection at the middle school library. So I was really happy to see this data. And now in a totally different realm, the Mental Health Collaborative Curriculum, which is a curriculum that we use in our schools. If you look at the x-axis, that will tell you where the students were in terms of the percent correct on a particular question. So question A is right here. The first time the kids took this test, and this was without any teaching, 22% of the kids got it right, which means that about 78% of our kids got it incorrect. And so after the instruction, when we look at the post-exposure number, we look at the y-axis, and you can see that it went up to about 45% of the kids got it right. So still 54% of those kids or 55% were not getting that question correct. And so these live in the category of stubborn misconceptions, which is really kind of fascinating to me. So I had asked Abby what those stubborn misconceptions looked like, because I'm wondering where our kids are sort of struggling to grow. And so in terms of our stubborn misperceptions, the first one, for example, which was letter A, is suicide in young people is the result of the stress of being a teenager. That statement is false, but more than 50% of our kids said that thought that that was true. Most people who experience traumatic events will develop a mental illness. That statement is false, but again, more than 50% of our kids thought that was true. Feeling sad about a loss will often lead to depression. That statement is false, but more than 50% of our kids thought that that was true. Asking someone, are you thinking of harming yourself, will not encourage them to act on their thoughts. That statement is true, but about half of our kids still thought that that statement was false. And if you are worried about someone who you think may be suicidal, you should ask them directly, are you thinking of harming yourself? That statement is true, but 50% of our kids thought that that was false. So this is just the kind of data that trickles into me at the end of the year, and you can see it surrounds things like mental health or library use or high school guidance or preliminary MCAS results. And so there's just, I guess, so much data that's really fascinating, and that's what I have to share with you tonight, is just things that have trickled in, and I thought it was kind of great.
Little data nerd.
Yeah, I am a data nerd, and our people have really come so far, not just accumulating that data, but using it. So it's nice. I'm thrilled about ELA. Go ahead, Gina.
Thank you. It's so hard to see from here. Are
I
those
know.
things that should show up in packets that we get so that we can look
We
at or
always
follow
post these
along?
to the website the day after
Oh, okay.
the meeting. And it just goes in really as a report because, that way, because it's not something you're voting on.
Okay.
And there really are days where we're even throwing something in at the last second. But I've had this done for a while, and I could certainly send it to you earlier, or I could even send it to you while we're all sitting at the table, just so you have it on
That'd
your
be
machines.
great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's perfect.
Thank you.
And that's all I have for you, so thank you.
Okay. I have a question about that one about depression. I'm assuming that they know the difference between the word depression and sadness.
So I do wonder about that.
I'm really depressed is, I'm not
Yes.
feeling great as opposed to I'm depressed.
There's a researcher at Oxford University, I think her name is Lucy Folks, and she's done a lot of work on something that she calls incidence prevalence. And I've just really been reading this stuff for my own personal interest, but what she talks about is we use so much of this language now around mental health that our kids take these terms and they sort of just internalize them. And so some kids will say, oh, I'm so depressed today. But really, they're just sad today, or they're feeling a little down today, or they're not themselves today. But they use a sort of technical mental health term to interchangeably, I think, with
Right.
other things. So that might be the reason for that one. But it is interesting that our kids seem to think that when you feel sad on one day, it can lead to depression. But clearly that statement is false.
Right.
And our kids didn't think of it that way. So we have a lot of SEL. And really, the mental health collaborative curriculum is really around mental health and stigma. Like, why is it so stigmatizing to talk about these things, or to talk about yourself? Or
Okay. Other questions? Just want to make sure I can't see Chris up there. Chris, do you have any questions?
No, no questions.
Okay. All right. Then if that's it for that, I will go into the school committee chair report, just to say that payroll warrants S24026, S24BAL have been approved. Warrants 24-080S and 24-081S, 24-082S, 24-083S, 24-084S, 24-085S, 24-086S, 24-087S have all been approved. So, all right. This moves us down to liaison reports. We are going to be doing our liaison appointments at our next meeting, since that will be our first opportunity to be a full committee. So that, I don't know if there was anything on CPAC or anything that.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, the next item is the item A of new business, which is the digital wellness project incentive.
Sure, this one should be very easy and very pleasant. The Metro West Adolescent Health Foundation had put together a project where they were interviewing some young women about the digital world and sort of their mental health. Hopkinton was a school community that engaged in the project, and if you did, you would get $1,000. And so Wendy MacArthur, who is the librarian at the middle school that we were just talking about, and Heather Abrahams, who is the librarian at the high school, were both parts of this. And so what we're asking you to do tonight is to approve that $1,000 so that each one of those librarians will get $500, sort of equally split, so that they can get materials for those libraries.
Okay, that's great. So,
I move to accept the $1,000 incentive for the district.
okay.
Second.
Motion by Susan, second by Jamie. We'll do a roll call, starting with you, Susan.
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Chris?
Yes.
Okay, it is unanimous and so passes with a great deal of thank you. All right, so that moves us into item B, which is the Hopkinton High School .4 wellness teacher.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start by commending Mr. Bishop and Mrs. Hanscom for their sort of out-of-the-box thinking on this one. We pretty much went through the entire 23-24 school year with a vacant 1.0 paraprofessional position at the high school. And, you know, due to their ability to think outside the box with scheduling and be really flexible with scheduling, we weren't out of compliance. But we do have worries about going into the 24-25 school year and ensuring that we are taking that position and making sure that we are maximizing opportunities for our students on IEPs and for our general education students. So what Mr. Bishop is proposing is that we take the 1.0 paraprofessional dollar amount, eliminate that position, and then transfer that into a point for wellness teacher. And the two classes that that person would be responsible for we would add a unified physical education class to the high school, so we would have unified PE. We already have it in the middle school. We want to bring that to the high school. And then the second thing that that person would do is that person would function as a point to math specialist, and that person would either support students who are Foundations of Algebra 1 students, or that person would co-teach with the person who teaches Foundations of Algebra 1. But we really do need the support in the math, and we're sure that this person can do that.
Could you define what a wellness teacher is?
It's physical education wellness.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
PE
the
wellness.
new word for PE?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
I'm old.
So, question.
Yes.
Well, comment and a question. I love, it sounds like our unified PE is moving forward in a very
It sure
positive way.
is,
I love
yes.
that that is expanding and moving through the district. So it's not really a .4 wellness teacher? I'm assuming it's a .2 and a .2, or is that same person going to?
Same person,
Okay.
we believe, yes. Naturally, we would have to post for the position and interview, but,
Okay.
yep.
Are there any other questions on that position? Okay.
I have a question. So is the reduction of the para position, we don't expect there will be students that need that coverage, or the flexible staffing covers that need for assistance to a student directly?
The flexible staffing will pick up some of the IEP coverage. However, I'm really glad that you asked that question, because I have sat with Mrs. Hanscom and Mr. Bishop, and their belief is that this will not ever put us out of compliance. So we should be perfectly fine that way. I had said to them that we really need to make sure, and, you know, we were able to do that in the 23-24 school year, so I'm confident in them that when they say that we won't be out of compliance, that we won't be.
This just popped into my head, so I apologize for
Okay.
not asking
Yep.
this earlier, but are there other vacant paraprofessional positions at the high school that you're aware of?
I do not think that there is.
Okay.
no.
All right, so this was the only unfilled one. Okay. All right, if there are no other questions, would somebody like to make a motion?
I move to approve replacing the vacant 1.0 paraprofessional position with a .2 wellness teacher and a .2 math specialist teacher.
Okay, motion by Jamie.
Second.
Second by Susan. We'll do a roll call, starting with you, Susan.
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Chris?
Yes.
Okay, that is unanimous, and thank you to Mr. Bishop and Mrs. Hanscom for working on that. All right, so we are down to item C, which is the adaptive playground designer. Susan, that's you.
Thank you. So as you recall, at the last school committee meeting, the school committee accepted the grant from the CPC in the amount of $100,000 for the playground design. The Adaptive Playground Committee put the RFP out for the designer, and through interviews and their proposal evaluation, selected the highest ranked designer, which was the Beta Group. So we began fee negotiations with Beta to fit within this $100,000 grant. And the fee proposal at this time is $63,825 to be awarded to the Beta Group.
Great. Okay, thank you. Are there questions on that? Okay. Is there somebody who would like to make a motion?
Move to accept the bid from Beta, $63,825 as the designer for the adaptive playground.
Okay, motion by Susan.
Second.
Second by Jamie. Roll call starting with you, Susan. Jamie?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Chris?
Yes.
Okay, so that is also unanimous and passes. We do not have any old business listed. In terms of the, we need to do the items by consensus, but just for folks who are at home, we did go into executive session at the beginning, but we are re-entering executive session rather than adjourning, and we will adjourn after the executive session. So just for clarity on that. So, do you want to go ahead with the items?
Certainly, yeah. As superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
Are there questions on the items by consensus or anything people would like pulled out?
I just have one question on the minutes. I know at the June 20th meeting, for example, Chris had a bunch of questions for the engineers for Hopkins, and the minutes reflect just that they answered questions. Is that because we are recording the meetings, and so if someone needed or was curious to see what the questions were, they would go back and watch the recording? Or should the minutes be capturing the gist of the questions and the answers? I assume it's the first, but I was just curious.
So I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest, that we do a higher level on that and people are able to go in to look at the recording. But the higher level does meet the, what is required under the open meeting law. But it is important. And we also do post so that people are able to click the link to get back to the HCAM recording. Any other questions? Okay. Is there somebody that would like to make a motion relative to the items by consensus?
I move to approve the items by consensus.
Okay, motion by Jamie.
Second.
Second by Susan. Roll call starting with you, Susan.
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Chris?
Yes.
Okay. So that is unanimous and so passes. And then I would seek a motion to enter back into executive session pursuant to MGLC 30A S21A2 regarding the Level 3 grievance filed by the Hopkinton Teachers Association as required by the collective bargaining agreement between the school committee and the Hopkinton Teachers Association. And then we will adjourn from executive session.
Before you vote, can we just tell Chris that the previous
yes.
link is still alive?
Yes.
Yep.
Did you get
So-
that?
Okay.
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 Thank you.
I move that we recess into executive session.
You gotta read the whole thing now. Or you can just say so moved.
So moved.
Okay. Motion by Susan. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Second by Jamie. Susan, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Chris?
Yes.
Okay, and so we are adjourning into executive session at 9:42, and we will not be returning to the live recording here. So thank you very much for all who tuned in for our meeting tonight. Have a good night, and I will see everybody in executive session.
Recording stopped.